Hello, viewers. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in on Scope TV for the Eagle Stock Show. On this show, we aim to fly high and dig deep into issues as we continue our fight for the complete independence of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia or Resistance Forever. The purpose of the show is to inform our audience and to educate them on our core values and the type of society that we intend to establish in Goya. Their feedbacks and questions will be welcome, so stay tuned, don't go away. My name is Jojo Anang, alias Ambazo. I have with me our guest today is Comrade Nze, and he's going to introduce himself to you shortly. So, Comrade Nze, today the topic of today is diplomacy. So, Comrade Nze, I'll go straight away to the very first question, which is before you introduce yourself, which is diplomacy. Diplomacy is a very important topic, and we cannot possibly shoot ourselves to Boya without sitting down to dialogue. So it's a very important topic, and we have a very important guest here who is going to talk on this topic. But before we get into that question, we would like to ask this question, which is like a icebreaker. So, Comrade Nze, like I said, there is absolutely no way we are going to shoot ourselves to Boya. So what diplomacy?
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Albert Nze, and I am privileged to head the Committee for Diplomacy and International Relations for School. And I think it is a very important committee. It is a very important step. It is a very important path that Ambazonia, the Southern Cameroons, must take. As you rightly said, we cannot shoot ourselves to Boya. And so how does diplomacy come in? What role does it play? What are the institutions or the structures in place that we need to connect with or to? Who are the actors that we need to reach out to, or within us that needs to play this role? And so Scope, from the very word of its creation, has put diplomacy at a very pivotal position, to mean that diplomacy is the foundation, and diplomacy also helps to put the wall, and diplomacy is going to be obviously the infinite path that we will take. Some people will say, okay, what about self-defense? And my definition of diplomacy will answer that. Diplomacy, there is one word which is very important in definition of diplomacy, which is holistic. It is comprehensive. It is not streamlined to one particular method or idea, and that is why I want all Ambazonians to know that diplomacy is for everybody, be you in ground zero, in the Republic of Cameroon territory, or in the diaspora in Europe and America, or Asia, Latin America, wherever you find yourself. And so diplomacy is this holistic approach that is used in the international community in order to come out with international peace and economic development. We know the era of slavery and slave trade was not diplomacy. One group was disenfranchised. We know the era of colonization was not diplomacy. We know the Berlin Conference was not an aspect of diplomacy. And so diplomacy will come to involve self-defense. That means the minority have the power and the right to speak. And that is why when we'll be talking, you realize that all these institutions that we'll be reaching out to, either in their charters or in their resolutions, they have self-defense as a means to democracy, as a means to subdue the dictator, as a means to live. So diplomacy, we are going to talk so much about diplomacy, the role Ambazonians should play, and what specifically we should do, and to an extent what Scope is doing to make sure that diplomacy takes its rightful place in this revolution.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for that explanation. Viewers, you've heard what he said. He said some very key issues. We've talked about that diplomacy is comprehensive, it is holistic, it's not a one thing, it's something that diplomacy involves self-defense, very important. Because one, like I began by saying that we cannot possibly shoot ourselves to Goya. So diplomacy is complete, it's a set, something like a set. And again, you said something very important, that in the days of colonization, that was not diplomacy. And that is why we find ourselves in the situation in which we are today, because of the poor decolonization process that happened to us. And you also you said something about who to reach out to in terms of diplomacy, and who are these people, the people to reach out to, and who will be reaching out to these people. So I want you to take this opportunity to look into the camera and tell the people who are you, who gives you that credential to talk about this very important topic, diplomacy. Why do you think you are qualified to talk about diplomacy?
I think the first person we need to talk to, let me start by the people or the institutions we need to talk to. The first person is the United Nations. You know, the Secretary General of the United Nations, when he was elected, he actually clamored and preached for prevention before wars or before crises can even erupt. And so he realized that past Secretary Generals have failed to prevent. The United Nations always come like the bad police cop. The thief is gone, and then they are out there with the aspect of human rights. Let me give you a background to this. It was the teachers' trade union, the 5 teachers' trade union, and the bar associations of the Northwest and the Southwest that I can say is the immediate cause of this. And then we had the students of the University of Boya, and then we had other trade unions that joined to form the consortium, and then the consortium was banned. And so the United Nations cannot claim they did not see all this coming. It was built up. Even before then, you remember Foncha went to the United Nations with his delegation to tell them that what he thought, because he defeated Endele in an election and he was used as the leeway for a referendum. And so when he realized that this was not what he signed for, he went to the United Nations. And even in the 90s, we saw that multipartism was almost an English-speaking thing, and many of them died. And another delegation again went to the United Nations to tell them that these are just fire sparking. There is something underneath. We need to go back to our history and solve the problem. And then when the teachers, lawyers, students problem started, we kept on telling the United Nations, this is what you need to do. For 3 years, we've had demonstrations, we've had ghost towns in front of the United Nations, in embassies around the world. So they cannot claim that they don't know what is happening. They've seen the gruesome images that are coming from ground zero. You remember the very first 4 boys that were shot simply because they protested the coming of the Prime Minister of La Republique, Marutu Bamenda. And so we saw grandmothers being shot and burnt in their homes. We saw crippled. And then 15 people were killed. And then 30 people were killed. And now we have mass graves. And we have use of chemical weapons. And then we have millions in Nigeria. We have hundreds of thousands in prisons. The United Nations cannot tell me they do not see all this. And so we want to reach out to them, especially to the Secretary General, to say, this was your baby. You would have used this situation between the Southern Cameroons and the Republic to show that diplomacy works. You failed to do that. And now this is an opportunity for us to present it to you now in another way, that it is no more the crisis, it is now a war, it is not a genocide, and you cannot still stay aside.
Stop right there. You said to show that diplomacy works. Are you telling us that diplomacy has failed, that the United Nations, they have failed? Because with all the things that you just talked about, the 206 houses burned down, our villages destroyed, our parents killed, children shot in the backs of their parents, and the United Nations is still looking, it's still watching. Are you telling us that the diplomacy has failed, or the United Nations have failed? And what steps are you going to take to ensure that they step up their game?
Oh, thank you. The thousands of lives that have been lost cannot be repaired. So the part that has failed was the part that would have prevented deaths, the destructions, and many horrible things that are happening. The part that has not failed is the future. And he should know that there's determination that Southern Cameroonians are not willing to stop. So it is his place to come up with the different institutions that are there in the United Nations. For example, we have the Decolonization Committee. It was dissolved, but before it was dissolved, they said it can be reinstituted if need be. Presently, we have France, who is the Secretary General, who can reconvince that Decolonization Committee is a French. And so United Nations need to hold France accountable if they do not. Okay, if they don't want the Decolonization Committee to come forth because they want to claim decolonization already happened, which it is something we need to argue about, then they should allow us to go to the General Assembly. Because you remember, we were not asked to, the United Nations Charter did not give Britain or France the right to give us to La République du Cameroon. From mandate territory to trust territory, we were a self-government. And from self-governing, we were to attain our independence. The idea of, do you wish to join Nigeria or Southern Cameroon, was therefore just a political move. And they should allow us to go to the General Assembly to present this. If it is true, then they should give us all the documents that we need. If it is not true, they should explain to us the differences in what is written in the charter, which cannot be changed by politicians, and the steps that were taken by Britain and France to ask us if we want to join La République du Cameroon or want to join Nigeria. Or the last step, they should allow us to go to the Security Council. They should stop blocking us. China is not blocking because they find a way of giving money. France, obviously, they always block us. Britain, they're just being, I can say, shy because they know the role they played, and they should boldly come out and make amends. So they should allow us to follow all these three steps. If not, then the United Nations will continue to be what it has been for the past 3 years.
Okay, talking about the General Assembly, because you just said something about the General Assembly, are there some instruments through which we can use to pass through the General Assembly, bypass the Security Council and go straight to the General Assembly? Because I believe that the General Assembly will have a greater chance because it will be determined by the number of people who cast their votes in our favor.
Yeah, in the General Assembly, it is very broad. You see, even NGOs and individuals.
Excuse me, I'm talking specifically about the instrument. Are there any instruments through which we can pass to go straight to the General Assembly?
There are. We have countries that are friendly to us, and they are willing to present our case at the level of the General Assembly. And so those countries should be given the opportunity to present our case. I think we have all this problem because there's the veto power. Southern Cameroon.
Don't go to the veto power. That's why I say, are there instruments that we can pass through, bypass the Security Council? Because it's only in the Security Council that these veto powers can be exercised. But through the Security Council, through the General Assembly, they don't have no veto power. It's just a majority vote. So that's what I'm saying. Let's talk about the General Assembly, because you talk about the General Assembly. So let's talk about the General Assembly and keep aside the Security Council for now. Are there any instruments through which we can bypass the Security Council and go straight to the General Assembly?
Can you explain to me what you mean by the instruments?
Yeah, are there, because there are procedures. You understand there are procedures to follow. Because you talked about the General Assembly, that we can pass through the General Assembly. So I'm asking if there is any way through which we can bypass the Security Council and go straight to the General Assembly to discuss this matter.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We have diplomats, individuals who can do that. We have organizations that can do that. And then we have ourselves. And this is my point. The administration of the United Nations is just having too much bottlenecks. The fact that we were once a mandate territory and a trust territory does not take our seat away from the United Nations, even the unification was real. Are you getting my point? So we still have the right to submit the same documents or applications to attend meetings at the level of the United Nations. The problem may be who should attend, what level of representative, because now we have the IG1 and 2, we have scope, we have this and that and that. That is what should be the concern, not if we should have access to the United Nations rec room. We should, and we should actually be in the agenda. The most prolific method we should get there is through, say, the ambassador of the United Nations or of the United States to the United Nations, or Nigeria, or South Africa. I'm calling these ones because they are prominent. And so our
point to... Can we go to the next question? But before we go to the next question, I just want to say there's only one IG. And the other IG is on Facebook. There's only one IG, and that is the IG of Sisiko Ayok Chabe. So the next question is, in concrete terms, what achievement have we made through diplomacy? And what are some of the countries that we've talked to? And what have been their response so far? You don't need to name the countries, but just tell our people what, in concrete terms, what have we done? What have we achieved so far in terms of diplomacy? Because that's what our people don't want to
do. Let me just about the IG. I think Scope's position is Sisiko is the head of the interim government, but we cannot delegitimize the thousands who are still following Sako and even Chris Ano. I disagree with them 100%. But we are now trying to broaden that scope. That's why when I started, I said we have a holistic approach. That means those you disagree with and those you agree with, there must come a time when we have all these debates face to face, like I'm talking now with you, Jojo. Okay, back to your question.
Yeah,
I think diplomacy have worked so well. And you saw what happened in the German parliament. You saw what has been happening in the United States of America, in the Congress, in the Senate. We've seen the Security Council warming up. We've also seen the Commonwealth chair lady and the UN Secretary General going to come on to collect bribes and other diplomats. So the best thing we have to know about diplomacy is that the important actors know our story. They know it. And so we need to go now to a position, and that position is not going to come from them. It's not going to come from the Republic to Cameroon, of course. First, the bad will they have. Secondly, they are ineffective. I'm not sure if the president is still in his mindset to even do all these complicated things that we talk about. So you realize that it is us who have the burden to reach all these legal institutions, the courts, the Bretton Woods Institute as a whole, the banks. If we have to suspend some ministers or some generals, it is not like the public. It is not, nobody, is us. So I just want you to know that we have the burden of carrying out diplomacy in an internationally recognizable manner. Sometimes it may not be to our favor, but we have to hold that burden for now. And so I will hold those countries that are warming us up towards us for now, for the purpose of legitimacy, because we have individuals and they will still have to take these things to maybe to their parliaments or to their senate for ratification before a country can give a leeway to say this is our position regarding the Southern Cameroon case. But we have many countries that are warming up to it. And so the burden lies on us to cover that gap. And it is that gap of diplomacy that we need to step up and show to the world that we are capable, that we are able. It is holistic, as I said earlier.
So are you telling our people on Scope TV, the Eagle Stock Show, that we've been having some breakthroughs at the level of diplomacy, that there are some countries, individual countries, that are willing to take our case up? Is that what you're telling our people?
Yep, there are. We have friends. We have friends at high places, and we need to keep them jealously. We need to protect them.
Very important. Point noted. But then you talk about all the talks that have been going on. Everybody knows about the talks that have been going on in the EU Parliament, in the British Parliament, in the US Congress, and all that. And every individual group or every individual person is taking credit. How do you tell people that Scope has been at the forefront of all these talks? Just how do you convince someone? Because everybody is giving credit for this.
I would like to applaud the tenacity of every Ambazonian. Sometimes when they fight, and then you want to listen, you hear some very, very positive words. And so Scope has been able to pinpoint all those very positive sentences, even in a crowd of sometimes horrible things being said. And so Scope, let me give you an example, my view of Scope. It has many men of integrity. It has many men of rectitude. It has men who are willing to sacrifice their ego, their pride, for the sake of the country. If you look at the background of Scope, there was so much criticism here and there. They came up, even though disproved, they did not pick on the tiny little fight to say, I need to clear my name, I need to do this. We realize that those are just distractions. And Scope went straight ahead to fight the bigger goal, which was the restoration process. This, however, does not delegitimize any other group, whatever that group is doing. We want to encourage individuals, groups, to fight in any way possible they think is possible to reach Boya. And that is sometimes, it is never neither or. It is sometimes both. Sometimes it is never right or wrong. It is sometimes which is feasible. And so Scope has taken this step of always trying to find the best possible option, which sometimes can be with your enemy, the person you don't admire. And so you have to accept that. So I think I like Scope for who they are as a person and for institutions that they are trying to build, because at the end, it is not going to be just strong men. It is going to be strong institutions. And I think Scope for now is a very formidable institution.
So bottom line, what we are saying, that everything that has been happening at the level of diplomacy is as a result of our collective achievement, not because of one group. Everybody has contributed. Okay, that's very important, because we don't want people to be claiming credit for certain things that they haven't been involved in. So thank you. Let's go to the next question. My next question is, what can each and every one of us as ordinary Ambazonians do at the level of diplomacy to foster diplomacy? Because we cannot leave diplomacy to you alone or to any particular group. I think it's something that everybody should be involved in. So just look into the camera and tell those people out there who do not have something, who do not know what to do, because there are people who really want to do something, but they do not know what to do. You are master of diplomacy, and that's why you're talking about this topic. Look into the camera and tell our people out there that this is what you can do to foster our diplomacy. Just look into that camera and tell them straight, simple, in simple terms, so that they understand exactly what they can do.
Thank you so much. I would like to start by talking to those in ground zero, the role they can play. The international community is watching. So sometimes when you have an opportunity to like or share or comment on social media, make sure that you are passing a positive message. Another role you can play is to belong to a group, but be careful of your security. If you have access to a phone, internet, you can join Scope. I think Scope email should be somewhere on the website. You can reach out to me. I would like the producer to put my email so that you can reach out to me. So if you're in ground zero, just knowing that you can have access to internet is already a powerful tool. You remember Malala, he was in Pakistan in a village and she was able to shake a whole region. So it can be you, Malala can be you. Another way you can be active, I have friends who are in La Republique and are playing a very great role in supporting those who are in ground zero who are not able to do anything. So reach out to them. They will be of great help. Then to those who are in the diaspora, we have the senates, we have the parliaments, we have different government branches around the world. For example, here in California, we have the senator from my state. We have a couple of them. And then for my county, we also have one. And so I happen to make sure that I'm related to all of them in one way or the other. And so I make sure I update them with the necessary information they need to have. So instead of sometimes just screaming on Facebook or on WhatsApp group, get up, pay a visit to a senator, pay a visit to a parliamentarian, and present your case. Another way we can do it is to reach out to institutions like ours. We will be looking forward to coming up with a comprehensive document that will explain our history, that will explain the legal path, and that will explain the diplomatic path in the simplest possible terms, that if you can take it to somebody, he will know that this is our problem and this is the solution we seek.
So now, fellow viewers, I hope you are enjoying this program. You've just heard from him. If you are on ground zero, there are things that you can do. One, if you have access to the internet, be positive. Make sure that everything that you are contributing through the internet is positive, not insult, because insult will not take us anywhere. Educate those on ground zero how to stay safe. That is what those on ground zero can do in terms of diplomacy. Then for those who are in the diaspora meaning those who are out of Cameroon, even in our republic, contact the embassies. Like, you can contact the embassies, you can contact your parliamentarians, you can contact your local councillors, you can contact even your churches. Lay complaints to them, mobilize your churches. That is what you can do to foster our diplomacy for those who are outside. It's not, you don't need to pay money to contact your parliamentarian, you don't need to pay money to contact a councillor, you don't need to pay money to contact congressmen if you're in the United States of America. You don't need money to do that. All you need to do is to just fetch that email address and write them and tell them, talk to them specifically about the human rights abuses, because they are more interested in things like that than any other thing. Through that, you can go on and start telling them other things. But most importantly, talk to them about the abuses that are happening back home. Thank you very much, Comrade J, for that. Thank you very much.
They should reach out to Scope. Yes, I think Comrade Jojo's video just paused, and what he was saying is very important. Diplomacy should be what we clamor for, because at the end, we are building a state, a nation in the 21st century. It is not back in the 18th or the 19th century where we build isolated kingdoms and empires. This time, your neighbor may be a country in Latin America, your neighbor may be a country in the Scandinavian. So we should engage in diplomacy, knowing that we are not just fighting a battle, it is a war. And after the physical war that is actually going on, we are going to engage in economic battles all around the world. So it's now for us to make sure that we engage diplomacy in the most holistic manner.
Yeah, that point has been noted. My question was, you just said it's important to belong to a group. Why do you think it's important to belong to a group? Because people say groups are divisive. They don't want to pay allegiance to AMBAZONIA and not to groups. Why do you think it's important to belong to a group? Tell our people, because some people might not know why it's important to belong to a group.
I think it's very important to belong to a group. When I started, I was all by myself. Like, I would criticize Tasang, I'll criticize Ayaba, I'll criticize Milan, I'll criticize. And then one day somebody told me, why don't you not be part of the solution? Why do you just stay aside and you criticize? I said, because I'll be compromised. You see, that is a very dangerous step, because if you are only criticizing and another person is there trying to give solutions, there is no dichotomy between that. But when the two of you are together, like we scope, there is always very strong arguments before we come out with a stand. And so you criticize and you have the opportunity to propose solutions. And then from there, you can get better. You realize that most groups are not as formidable as they should be because they shun critics. And most groups are not productive. Why? Because they are formed to critique. And so you need to belong to a group that brings all this together. And that is one beautiful thing about Scope. And that is one beautiful thing about the group that Tasang put together. They were always having all these vigorous arguments. And then another important thing, for example, what Scope is doing, it is a political organization. It is also involved in a humanitarian. If you are by yourself, you cannot do all this. But when you are together, it is possible that you do a lot of things. And then you also have resources from different people. Sometimes, if I didn't know you, Jojo, would be fighting on Facebook. But because I know you as a person, I know your beauties, I know you're good and you're bad, I know your devotion, I know you as a person. And so I don't just talk to you the way I will be shouting you on social media. So when you belong to a group, first, you are stronger together than an individual. But still, if you think that, you can't work with people, just be positive and visit your parliamentarian, visit your senator, talk to the person about what is happening in Cameroon. We can do this in many different ways.
Yeah, fellow viewers, those of you who are just tuning in, thank you for tuning in. We are on Scope TV, the Eagle Stock Show. And from what you just heard from my host, my guest, he's trying to tell us the importance of belonging to a group, which is very important. One, you build bond together. Two, you don't just sit out there and be criticizing. When you're in a group, you contribute with other people, you share ideas. When you're in a group, you can contribute for humanitarian needs for others. So that is the importance of belonging to a group. Because if you're in isolation, you cannot do this together. But when you sit together, you share ideas. If you're in a group, you can look at things from different perspectives. But the most important thing is that when you're in a group, be tolerant to other groups, appreciate what other groups are doing, appreciate what other people are doing. Don't just pay allegiance to the group, pay allegiance to the struggle, pay allegiance to the revolution, pay allegiance to the Ambazonian War of Independence and not to your group. But contribute in your group in building trust and bond. Because like he said, we've known each other now for 3 years. We've been into different forums. He knows some of the things I've been saying. I know some of the things that he's been saying. We can trust each other. You can only work with somebody that you trust, somebody that you actually know. Especially in this revolution where there is a lot of infiltration in and out. So it's very important that you belong to a group. But it is up to you to make that decision. Nobody's compelled to belong to a group. It is advisable to belong to a group. Thank you very much. I did not know the importance of belonging to a group. Very important. You build some friendship. You work together, you share ideas together, which is very important. Thank you. And let's go to the next question. Do you think we have the competence and resources to pursue our cause diplomatically? If not, what is scope doing to enhance our competence and capability in the area of diplomacy?
I think that question is 50-50. We have the competence because this is the generation that have held a dictator this long. And the dictator seems to be losing. And the world is bracing towards us. And we've not been termed terrorists. And we've not been termed disruptors. So you remember, this is not the first time the Southern Cameroon revolution is coming up. It happened in the late 60s, in the 90s. This is almost in the 2000s. And then this is the 20s. So basically, after every 10 years, this comes up. And so I may not be able to pinpoint what specifically has made this generation different from the other. But the overwhelming success, I call it overwhelming because we will sit in Boya before we can really enumerate how much good we've done. So the tools and the personnel, see somebody like His Excellency Sisiko, even in prison, the document he wrote was taken by BBC and it was used to challenge hierarchy at the level of the United Nations. Just like 1 week, he wrote that thing. Because it is so clear, it is well stated, that it basically just spells out what this revolution is all about. It is about the restoration of the statehood of Southern Cameroons. And these are the different steps we want to take. We do not want to say we want to get into negotiation because we've not seen good faith on the other part. This is what we want. Release everybody. Demilitarize our zone. And so he has come up with all these to show that we know what we are doing. So you see a person like Sisiko has positioned himself, he has given up himself with the other in prison with him, who wants to make sure that they sacrifice their being for the revolution, and it spreads across board. Milan is somebody that I've worked so close to, and I've seen so much integrity that he has. And his impact in Southern Africa, his impact at the level of the African Union, his impact even here in America, sometimes he comes here and he knocks on doors that some of us sitting here have not, and then he is sending you a message, hey, you need to make a follow-up on this and on that. And then he is in the Scandinavian, he is in Europe, in Belgium, in Germany. So we have men who have built all this integrity, and then we have Professor Anyangwe, we have, I mean, there are many Ambazonians of integrity spread across board that we just need to identify and make good use of them. And then the institutions that we've built, and that is why I said from the very beginning, we should not disenfranchise any group. Sometimes these groups may have nothing, but in criticizing them, we can actually build another. Sometimes I bring up an idea, it sounds stupid, but I've given you the platform to criticize me, and then you realize that in that process, you are developing an idea. And so this is supposed to be a time for discourse. Even when Britain and France decided that we will go into a referendum with France, what did they do? They gave time for broad-based consultation. They asked Foncha, Endele, and all the other politicians to go back home and campaign. Just leaving Nigeria was not enough. And so we need to come up with this attitude of loving one another, of listening to one another, of not always being ready to pick a stone and fight and kill somebody. No, we should not. We are all Ambazonians, and it's only when we listen to one another that we can build strong personalities, that we can build strong institutions and strong groups. If you see what Scope is right now, it's partly because of the criticisms it had at the beginning. They don't shun criticism, they listen to. And I want to encourage people like Ayabacho to listen to criticisms. I want to encourage people like Akwanga, people like John Baakuru, people like Sako, Chris Ano. I want everybody to listen to criticisms. Don't just listen to those who will sing praises of you, no matter how even horrible they may sound. I think there's so much to talk about this, but we'll come back to it later.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You didn't answer the second part of the question. What is Scope doing to build capacity within its members?
Okay.
I understand that there was a colloquium which educate people on how to talk to diplomats, how to engage politicians. So besides setting up colloquium, organizing colloquium like the one that happened in Germany last time, what other things is Scope as a group doing to build capacity within the members?
All right, the first thing, I am an institutionalist, so I believe in strong institutions. I believe that any group in which you are should aim at a global context, not just local. So the first thing that Scope has done is to build this strong institution that has a very, very strong base. I don't even know how to describe it in terms of its functions, but it is in such a way that it can sustain long-term activities. And okay, let me give you an example of what I mean, maybe by just demonstrating it. Scope does not just look at the restoration process. They want to look at the rehabilitation process. They want to look at the geopolitical position of Ambazonia. And so that is the first thing we need to do to make sure that we are strong as a country. We need to build these institutions. What Scope is doing in terms of its activities, you have the women, you have the youth, you have the level of the chairman's office, you have committees like the diplomacy and other different committees. They have all these activities that they are trying to put in place, first of all, for education. And then the Scope TV is one of them. And I want to encourage you to professionalize this platform. It is a very important platform. So education is going to be a very important aspect of our revolution. I don't just want people to think that it is an Amber Boy thing now. I don't want people to think that it is now a diaspora and a few groups in the diaspora. So education is very important. As you rightly said, the colloquium that just passed in Europe. And then Scope also will be participating in another program in South Africa with the bishops. If you remember Desmond Tutu and the role he played. So it is a very important platform. And no matter how tiny, how small any organization is or any structure they want to put in place, it's always very important. And then another thing we would like to do is create liaison offices all around the world. We should not just be on social media, we should be physical, so that somebody can pay us a visit or somebody can ask a specific question to say, Comrade Jojo, I'm coming to Europe. Where do you stay? Where is your office? What documents do you have to prove this or to prove that? If we have these offices, liaison offices all around the world, then we'll be able to shun propaganda that is coming from ground zero, especially from the Republic forces. You see, sometimes they go and kill and then they want to frame our people. But because we have the people's back, people send this information to us. And where are they kept? On my laptop. If we had a liaison office here in America, obviously somebody will come now to the liaison office and find out the authenticity of this document, of this information. Can I speak to Mama Jeda who was killed? Can I speak to Papa Theophile, who's can I speak to Mama Jeda whose husband was killed? Or can I speak to Papa Theophile whose son is an Amber boy? Why is he joining the Amber boys? Or different information center. So these liaison offices, we hope is hoping to plant them all over the world for the purpose of the restoration of Southern Cameroon. It's a long-term strategy, and we hope to achieve that.
Thank you for those of you who are just tuning in. Keep sharing and invite others. Let's talking about education. You mentioned something very important about education. I understand that our people need to be educated. So, talking about education, what's the concept of Boya?
The concept of Boya goes back to what Endele had in mind, and that was to build a nation that is a model for Africa. And so we realized that when Gojin Dinka came, he had that same concept. When he came out with something new, he redefined, and he called it AMBAZONIA. And so another next generation came and said, for us to have this trip to Boya a success, to have our own country, to have our own economy, to have our own democracy, we need to redefine a lot of things. And so that is how we came up with the ANC1, the ANC2, the SCNC, and now we have scope. So my concept of Boya is to have a country that is fully knowledgeable of its history, is to have a country that is fully aware of its surrounding, its geopolitics, its history, its geography, its anthropology. And I want us to first of all know who we are. If we know who we are, then whether you belong to AGC, you belong to SCOPE, you belong to IG, you belong to SCYL, you belong to whatever group, the infighting will not be there. And so we've moved a very milestone far from where we were. Remember the days of Northwest, Southwest, gone. And so we should not move from there and then we fall into groups. So Boya to me is going to be a form of government that is really for the people, by the people. And it is going to add something very sweet, which is the Ubuntu. When we were writing the constitution for SCOPE, I remember Eben kept on hitting on Ubuntu. You are because I am because you are. It fits perfectly, not just because people are scared of it being a socialist term, but it is to help people in a capitalist state. And capitalism is what AMBAZONIA is going to be built on. So we have this beauty about Africa. We have this beauty about the Western world. We have this beauty about the China, how their empires came together to form this big China. So AMBAZONIA is a learned community that is willing to learn from all parts of the world as a 21st century country, not a pre-colonial state.
Okay, thank you very much. To summarize what you just said, you said your concept of scope is a society, building a tolerant society, a society where different groups or political parties can live and work together without fighting. And secondly, you're trying to build a society where one for all for one, like what Manjo BBC said. So that's the concept of Boya. And so, yeah. So viewers, you've heard from him, you've heard from our guest. The concept Boya is we aim at building a society which is tolerant. You don't need to belong to my group or to my party to be tolerant to me. We don't need to share the same idea or opinion for you to appreciate what I'm doing. And we need to watch each other's back. Like actually used to say, you crash my back, I crash your own. Like Mancho BBC said, one for all for one. That is the type of Boya that we are trying to build. That is his concept of Boya. So very important. One for all for one. If you have this concept at the back of your mind, you won't fight anybody. You know that we are fighting. The fight is for each and every one of us. It is only all of us that can win this fight. So I think we are running out of time, but we'll have one last question that I think you have to answer. Then very important, briefly, If you are given the opportunity to plead our case to say the United Nations or the EU or African Union, what is going to be your talking point?
I think we touched this earlier when we started the discussion. First of all, to the United Nations. If our story is true, why are you quiet? If our story is false, why are you quiet? You see, in either ways, the United Nations have taken all this with a pinch of salt. And we do not want to get into international politics. We want to get into international diplomacy. Because when we get into international politics, you will come to Cameroon and you take gifts and you take statues and you take, listen to promises from one side. So we want to challenge you to use the United Nations for what it was meant for, to listen to everybody, especially the vulnerable. Southern Cameroon have been defined as a people, and it has been proven in court. You have the Security Council, you have the General Assembly, and you have different units at the level of the United Nations that should respond to us. To say you will just come to us because of humanitarian, that is not going to solve the problem. And I will demonstrate it this way. Somebody comes to your house and steals your car. And then you go out and you realize, that, oh, that's the guy who stole my car. And then you start the fight. And then the police come and say, oh, we'll just separate the fight, okay? Forget about the car. You know the fight will continue, right? Maybe till you get the car. So the United Nations should not just think coming in very powerfully with billions of dollars to solve humanitarian crisis is going to solve the problem. No. We have specific things that we are demanding, and one of them is the restoration of our independence. So we want the United Nations to know that there is platform at the level of the United Nations. If we had moved from the mandate to the trust territory and now to self-governance, what happened between being a self-governance state and a so-called reunification that was not even supposed to happen, because the resolution stated that colonial masters shall lead colonial states to independence. And so when they were asking the question, do you wish to join La République du Cameroon? You wish to achieve independence by joining La République du Cameroon or Federal Republic of Nigeria? It was a trick. Because they knew if they had just asked us to join, it means we will be joining as a self-governed state. So they took that out, and we want to challenge the United Nations at this level, even at the level of the Hague in court in Switzerland, even in Banjul. They should allow us to do that. They should stop blocking us, because just coming in with humanitarian is not going to solve this problem. That is at the level of the United Nations. Then the African Union. You remember the charter about borders? Those borders are still there. Countries were asked to resume the borders they had at independence. La République had their independence before the reunification. So there is no way they can say, okay, let us take back the boundaries to Bakassi. The boundaries were not in Bakassi. The boundaries they had at independence were by the Mongo. And so we have to claim that territory. Nigeria had their own boundaries. And when they tried to claim Bakassi, the United Nations refused. So why are they accepting boundaries to be shifted now by La Republic when they couldn't accept the boundaries to be shifted by Nigeria? What is the difference? We were in Nigeria for almost 54 years, and now we are in Cameroon getting to that. So there's no difference. They should allow us to go to courts that will even show these boundaries. Thank God they are still there. And then the institutions that we put in place, like the Prime Minister's Lodge, where the head of government was, we have our parliamentarians, the House of Chiefs, all those things, they are still there.
Now that they're not allowing you to go to court to ask all these questions, are there other avenues that you're trying to exploit to pass through to go to the courts?
Yeah, there are. And we've been speaking to these individuals. I'm sorry, I cannot just give their names because of maybe their political stand in their different countries.
Yeah, but you don't need to give the names.
Yeah, but the hope is that we will pressure the United Nations. We do not want to say let the Amber Boys pressure the United Nations. I love the video that General Arke was sending to the United Nations. It's not like he just like to go around and start killing people, soldiers out there of the Republic. Now, he sent them a very clean and clear message. That shouldn't be the case. The United Nations headquarters is in New York, where they passed the resolution on ordering colonial masters to give independence to colonial states, was done here in San Francisco. So I want to encourage all Ambazonians to go to all these different institutions and hit hard to make sure that they listen. I think they've started listening. It's for us now to get a little bit more organized and make gains out of it.
Yeah, talking again about diplomacy. You heard there is this bill that this lady, I've forgotten her name, is trying to pass to promote a one and indivisible Cameroon. What are you people in the United States doing to ensure that that bill doesn't go through the Congress?
I think the elections are coming. And the first thing, I even took that with a pinch of salt, because true diplomats know that the real solution is going to come from Southern Cameroonians. You realize that all these problems happen because they asked French Cameroonians to vote on the same things that Southern Cameroonians voted for. And so you have 10 million against 2 million, and the 2 million is the one that is asking for. So my committee is writing a letter to her, and we just want to let her know that the solution is not going to come from her. What we need from diplomacy, from diplomats around the world, is for them to listen to us. If they will not listen to us and they want to impose solutions, like somebody talking about a 10-state federation, 2-state federation, or one Cameroon, the solutions are not going to come from them. You listen to the refugees in Nigeria. When the United Nations went to give them food, they told them, we are no more Cameroonians, we are Ambazonians, we are Southern Cameroonians. You cannot take that away from them. That is coming from somebody who is living the suffering. And so you cannot sit here at the comfort of your AC office and then you want to propose a solution. That is what colonization was all about. What they need to do is just to put those instruments that will enable us to present what we have.
If you say they cannot impose solutions on us, why are we going to them? Why are we practicing? Why are we pushing for diplomacy? Only for them.
It is a legal step.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It is a matter of legality.
Yeah, because.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we expect them to do something, and so if we are going to them and asking them for help, then we're still saying that they cannot impose decision on us. Then how are we going to go about to achieve what we are fighting for? We have just 3 minutes, so we should be preparing to round up.
Yeah, you know, if I have a problem with my wife, and then I come to Jojo to talk to him, sometimes the best thing is for you to listen. Sometimes the next best thing is for you to give your advice. And then the next thing for you is to give a venue where I can come with my wife and we'll try to solve a problem. It's not for you to tell me to divorce or for you to tell my wife to divorce. You understand? So this is the platform we want the international community to be. The United Nations Red Room is a place not to dish out solutions even. It is a place to summon La République du Cameroun and to summon Ambazonians for them to sit and listen on both sides, legally, politically, in terms of institution, in terms of decency. It is not for the Secretary General to say, oh, it's one and indivisible Cameroon now. It's for him to create a venue for problem solving. It's the same thing we want from Congress of the United States of America. It's the same thing we want from the German Parliament. And they did that very, very well. The German Parliament, first of all, they explain what is going on. And then they identify the different actors. And then they said, this is what we want to do. Come out as a mediator between the two of you.
Okay, I think we're going to end there for today because our time, we've run out of time. It was very interesting. I hope I'm going to invite you again next time for us to talk more on this diplomacy because it's very important. It is something that we cannot avoid. Like we said at the beginning of the show, we cannot shoot ourselves to Goya. And again, for diplomacy, another part of diplomacy, one thing about diplomacy that we didn't talk about is that we need to talk amongst ourselves. We need to talk to everybody who is involved, to everybody who have a stake in this fight. And there's also one question that I didn't ask you. I'll just ask you this question. You go back and prepare for the answer. Next time, I'll invite you to come and answer this question because I think it's very important. I know that there are a lot of countries that are fighting because they think that if we get independence today, their interest in our country will be hampered. So I just want to find out what are some of the things that you're doing in the area of diplomacy to ensure this country that their interest in our country will not be touched. So they shouldn't be scared that if we have our independence, we are just going to be chasing our people. No. So I want you to find an answer to that. Then we'll discuss on that next time. Thank you very much.
I want our viewers to Google the blueprint. They should listen to the presentation of the blueprint so that on our next presentation, it is going to answer more on what you are talking about.
Yeah. Okay, you've heard from our host, Comrade J, that you viewers, you should Google our blueprint. I know some of you are very lazy to read, but try to Google it because we need knowledge. Because if you don't have knowledge about all these things, you don't know how to pursue this fight. You don't only have to be listening. Don't allow people to think and speak for you. Think and reason for yourself. Carry out your personal research and reason. And if you have some questions to ask, you come on to the Eagle Stock Show on Scope TV, where we're going to attempt to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much for all of you tuning today. We hope you enjoyed the program. We are going to we'll take your feedback and we are going to improve on the program so we keep on getting better and better. Thank you. Stay blessed and see you next week. Bye bye. Thank you for coming. God bless you too.